Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking your seats. Our panel on the topic Polkadot or not, common misunderstanding of key Polkadot features is about to start now. So please welcome our panelist, Burdges. Cassidy Daly. Jakub Gregus. Alexei. And our lovely moderator, Peter Mauric.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming today. I just got off a plane, so apologies for anything I might fuck up. I'm Peter Mauric, Head of Public Affairs at Parity Technologies. We'll go do a round of obligatory introductions before getting into what we think some of the biggest misconceptions about Polkadot are today, starting with Alexei.
So, hi, I'm Alexei. I'm one of the two co-founders of Intelay, have a research and computer science background, focused my PhD on cross-chain communication, and then we decided to build this first trustless BTC bridge. And yeah, happy to chat about, well, misconceptions on Polkadot.
Cassidy.
Hi everyone, I'm Cassidy. I do product strategy at Centrifuge. My background is actually in economics, so maybe coming at this conversation from that perspective. Yeah.
Our lovely host for this event.
Yeah, thanks. Hello everyone, I'm Jakub. I'm one of the heads of Hydra DX. Many of our heads.
Hello, I'm Burdges. I'm one of the researchers at the Web3 Foundation. Tend to be involved in consensus stuff. And
awesome. So this talk panel has been framed as a conversation around some of the biggest misconceptions about Polkadot. And I will admit there are many. In part, this is my job to help solve, and these conversations really help that. Polkadot is quite a complicated protocol, community, value proposition, something quite new to crypto. So sort of describing what it is and what it does and what it all means is I think, a bigger challenge for us as a community than, say, a mono-chain ecosystem, smart contract platform that's really, pretty easy to understand. So we'll go in alphabetical order. What is the biggest misconception about Polkadot? I know you start because your name starts with an A. It's going to get difficult in here because, very close. We're going to have to get into like multiple letters, but okay.
Well, I guess I have the
biggest misconception about Polkadot in your mind. And at the end of this talk, we're going to have like a beauty contest and you're going to get rated.
All right. Well, I think the biggest misconception that most people have is that they come thinking of, they're used to like these monolithic chain designs, and nobody has yet managed to build a fully sharded system with homogeneous security. People have been trying to do that for a long, long time, and then by design Polkadot achieves that, but then there's a lot of new terminology, new things that just come up out of nowhere essentially because it's not been done before. And I think getting people to understand the difference between a single monolithic chain, what it can do, what it cannot do, and what Polkadot is doing, and essentially what all other networks are now trying to do, and basically this difference, that it's a network of different chains, but they're individual and they can customize. I think this part, getting that over to people in simple terms, is what I think we've been mostly struggling with.
Yeah. And we'll get back to you, I think, after we go through this loop. Hopefully we have enough time. There's also some like bridge-specific things I think you might be good to answer because there have been so many bridge hacks recently. Everyone thinks like bridges are going to be inherently insecure, and I think that in the Polkadot ecosystem at least, both the interchain security within the Polkadot ecosystem and then the top bridge teams are actually building things in a different, better way. Cassidy's next. I'm trying to think, I think, then Jakub, then Jeff. That's alphabetical order. And also works this way. You guys sat in alphabetical order. That's perfect. What's the biggest misconception in your mind about Polkadot?
So, disclaimer to the audience, Peter actually asked me this before, and I did a quick check on one of my troll groups that trolls on Polkadot. And I actually saw one of the questions that they asked me was, isn't there no ecosystem in Polkadot? Like, not a real ecosystem? I was like, what are you guys talking about? Clearly, we can see here, everyone sitting in the audience, like, there's a huge ecosystem here and lots of support for these projects. Lots of projects that have launched and actually building really great tech.
Yeah, I literally, like I said, landed like 2 hours ago and came here for this talk and was amazed to see how few Parity and Web3 people I saw just like hanging out, which is awesome to see. We're around and we're going to be here this weekend, but it's really great to see a legitimate, organic, grassroots conference that we had basically nothing to do with. I love it. Thanks to our organizer, who's up next in alphabetical order.
Yeah, like, no, we feel that the .Zama ecosystem deserves this, and it's one of the few really decentralized ecosystems. Also, many projects are pushing decentralization pretty hard, like Moonriver, not letting any mover for for VCs, just for the crowd loans participants. Fala, A-Star, us, and like other Parachain teams, they are keeping for themselves really like very small percentage of supply in comparison to other ecosystems and projects. So yeah, why we should rely on Parity and Web3 Foundation to do everything, like they are doing like hard work stuff for years anyway.
Got enough to
they are
focus
exploring
on.
Yeah, they are exploring new frontiers who like other people or like ecosystem was like it was like something to be afraid to mention that, oh, we are thinking about like multi-chain future, like a future where you will have like much more chains than just Bitcoin and ETH. Like I remember that it was like laughable in 2019 and even like early 2020, like haha, like why would you need many chains when Ethereum will have Rollups and Bitcoin will have Lightning Network and Great Liquid, who is no one using. So yeah, so this is more like a gift for the community.
Yeah. And you see more and more, like in the Ethereum model, like they're converging upon a very similar model to Polkadot after all these years of like trying to figure out what comes next with sharding. And I think there's a consensus among a lot of people in the broader crypto ecosystem that a lot of these networks are going to converge upon a similar model because there's only so much security to go around. I think, Jeff, one of your things you wanted to talk about in terms of like the big misconceptions around Polkadot had to do with shared security.
Yes, so there's there are generally some misconceptions about what sort of the security notions that are used in Polkadot, and one of them, one of the ways this manifests is that there was this thing called fishermen in Gab's white paper, and Alistair and I removed those from the thing. Basically, the reason we removed them is because they don't actually make sense, and
But people constantly on Twitter are like, "Why did you remove fishermen?
Yeah.
This
So
is a
what
failure.
What
when
we
are you
do.
gonna
So
do it?"
the problem with fishermen is that they might not exist. You have no reason to believe they exist because they're not really being paid. They're not really. There's not actually a sensible model for paying them.
So what was the solution?
So what
to
we do
replace
instead
them?
is we have validators check, and we have a very tight scheme that ensures that we do enough checks that validators do enough checks, and that tries to ensure that at least some honest validators are doing checks, even in the face of some very advanced adversaries. So what happens is the result of this is that basically Polkadot is doing the relay chain is running an interactive proof, not totally unlike what's called a cut and choose protocol, between itself and validators. So sort of internally it's doing this interactive proof, and it's proving the correctness of the parachains in a certain model, a bit very close to a typical Byzantine model, but we're trying to be more precise about gossip assumptions of that, or at least more physical about them.
So in terms of like protocols and research that you would consider maybe competitive to Polkadot? Like who's deploying solutions that are the most similar to
what I would say is that we are making stronger assumptions than like a ZK rollup, but essentially we're providing this interactive proof rollup of the parachains. That's basically what we do, and to morally we're closer to a ZK rollup.
Yeah. So maybe that's a good question to open up to the panel. Whoever wants to answer first, go. Like I've read this, people saying, "Oh, parachains, who needs them? We have rollups. Like we can just do it all in a rollup." Like, what differentiates a parachain and a rollup, and why might you want to build in a parachain environment versus a rollup?
The main thing is that we were able to tailor the consensus in a lot of ways to be able to do this very efficient interactive proof. A rollup that has to deal with Ethereum is fighting a lot of different battles.
Yeah. Well, the Ethereum base layer is not built for rollups. Polkadot's relay chain is built for parachains, right? Yeah. So it's in that sense, it's like built for purpose, not a sort of hack together. But if anyone else have thoughts on parachains versus rollups?
I would say, it's the exact same thing from the parachain side. It's built for our specific purpose. It makes it more efficient. It makes it so that we can have our specific use case completely tailored on the parachain. We have our custom palettes, and Substrate makes that possible. Yeah. And that kind of stuff just isn't possible on rollups on Ethereum. And then cross layer 2 solutions don't exist yet.
Cross-chain messaging, and that's actually maybe something that's going to be the biggest differentiator for Polkadot long term, is like shared security environment and this trustless communication between parachains. Maybe another misconception that I've read quite a lot in the Twitter sphere, et cetera, is like IBC on Cosmos is just like XCM, which I don't think is quite an accurate statement. If anyone wanted to debunk that one.
Sure, I'll jump on that one. Maybe first commenting also on like the rollup versus parachains. Essentially, it is similar, right? So you have a rollup, it has does something off chain, off the main chain, and then you commit back. Well, parachains are the same, but you have built-in like message passing across parachains. They have a homogeneous way to connect and basically do these commitments and talk to each other. Whereas in rollups, everybody's doing their own. It's different models. You have typically a coordinator, you have censorship issues. And I haven't seen a rollup, and maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, actually having like governance mechanisms, upgradability built into it.
Decentralized validator set.
Exactly. So basically, like, it's just different namings, and I feel that just, it's a hype word. It has been commit chains and rollups, and another word is going to come again. Parachains allow us to just, do the same thing, but it comes pre-shaped. As a protocol, I don't have to worry about which rollup design I'm going to take, how am I going to talk to the other one. It's already there, and we can focus on the product. And then moving on to this cross L2, I guess, communication that we see as a big challenge, and a lot of startups popping up everywhere, raising millions to solve that and communicate across different L2s, typically through some multi-sig solution. Well, on Polkadot, we have that built in as part of the shared security model. And I think that's a unique property that most other cross-chain protocols don't have. It's essentially, we are talking to different chains. Each of these projects is an independent standalone system which we can customize. But because we are part of the larger consensus, we can rely on this consensus to enforce that our messages are being passed correctly. It's a very high-level view on this. But if you look at other cross-chain protocols, what IBC started as is a standard of how can two protocols talk to one another if they have some standardized interface. And the assumption there is, well, I don't know if this other chain is going to work. I will try to verify that through some light client mechanism or some trusted third party. But in the end, what you don't have is this model where I just know if we are part of Polkadot that I just can trust that this communication will succeed. And the assumption is that essentially is, well, if that goes wrong, well then something is wrong with the entire system, and you have to put up much more resources than just subverting a single parachain. Of course, there are intricate differences and technicalities that still need to be solved and improved, but I do see that it's much easier to build an ecosystem and build fast products and ship when you don't have to worry about all these things as an individual product. And I do think this is, from my perspective, the biggest benefit that Polkadot has right now. But yeah, open also like to hand over to everybody else.
I think also one argument which is not mentioned very often is how rollups are relying on price of ETH actually, and how it can like dramatically change their OPEX, which is funny because on one hand, Ethereum community did a great job to like create one of the most advanced economic model for some asset, like the EIP 159 is a really like brilliant model. But as ETH will be like much more and more pricier, like I think it's like pretty. We can we can count with 5 digits ETH, like probably like very soon, sooner or later. It doesn't matter. But now the use cases or basically ZK rollups, which are consuming a lot of gas, they need to settle their activity like they are advertising that there is like one block finality with ZK rollups, which is actually not true because like
on ETH main chain, on ETH mainnet, one block.
Yeah, but it's not true because they are producing these proofs or this block with all the state transition. I think like every 8 hours, some of them, or some of them a little bit sooner, some of them later, and some of their projects are claiming that you can mint like million NFTs for free, but it's basically not true because yeah, it's true for the like isolated ZK rollup ecosystem, but they are not existing for the other layer 2s or rollups until they will get to the mainnet and paying full the cost for the minting that NFT on the layer 1, and the same like optimistic rollups paying for the cold data, like actually every block, they are also like very much relying on the ETH price, but when DOT will pump like tomorrow like 5-3x and we will launch Hydra, it doesn't change for us anything. Like we will have the same prices, like our users can pay with whatever fees they want, like whatever assets, we can compute them, like better, like improve the UX a lot. The same feature as Akala.
Maybe this is also maybe something more meta to this point. It's like a misconception about blockchains and crypto in general, like a gasless blockchain. There's this misconception that blockchains have to have a gas model. Does anyone want to address that they don't? Looking at you, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, in our case, well, I guess what I would say here, so,
or maybe you can.
In our case, we have the gas model and everything sort of is pre-coded. In general, one of the things that I think will make a lot more sense that you can do, basically, I guess I would say if you have a kind of a transaction that it's worth really putting on a chain, and keep in mind that like users can't like audit smart contracts or whatever. So if you have a kind of a transaction that's really worth putting on that's really worth doing on any chain, then you're probably going to have shit tons of them. So it actually makes sense to have sort of these bespoke parachains that specialize in one thing. They can defeat MEV in a variety of techniques that are not available in Ethereum. They can use sort of whole block optimizations, and there's a bunch of like there's just an array of different advantages that you can exploit because you're coding something to a more specific purpose.
Yeah. So I think we have about 5 or 6 minutes left. I have two misconceptions in my head. I'm trying to decipher which one I think might be better. One, maybe the panelists can vote. One is debunking the crowd loans or rent misconception. And then another one is like Substrate's really hard to build on misconception. Which one should we go with?
Can I throw another one into the ring?
Yeah.
I'm noticing
this is
your
the last
socks.
one, so it's better be good.
No, we have some more time.
I'm noticing your socks. I've got Polkadot socks too, but mine
These
are
are
from
definitely Yayoi Kusama, New York Botanical Garden.
Exactly. So these are from the Kusama
there
exhibit.
when those were purchased.
But it reminded me of our favorite incentivized testnet, Kusama, And one of the misconceptions I've heard that's people are starting to change their mind about is that incentivized testnets are worthless. So I want to throw that into the ringer because I think that's a good topic too.
Can we cover all three? Because they're all pretty good.
If we have enough time.
We'll be
yeah.
fast.
So let's start with one, like Kusama, not a test net, don't need it. Why do we need it? Why has it been useful for y'all?
All right, happy to take that
Yeah.
one. I mean, I personally think, and I think we speak for the entire Interly team, we love that we have Kusama. I
Yeah.
think it's the most brilliant idea out there. And you see other networks realizing, oh yeah, this is smart. Why? Nobody cares about a zero value testnet, right? We can incentivize people, we can pay users to really go and test, but the perception and the feedback that you get the moment that you actually have real money involved, even if it's smaller and so on, is completely different. It's a complete different approach. And Kusama gives us exactly this. We can test everything from tech, product market fit, adding new features, deployments, and also things like exchange listing, TGEs of tokens and airdrops and all that stuff that you typically
Communicating
would
what
have
you're
to
doing,
do.
all that, literally down to like the operations of your team and
Exactly.
going through the motions before. It makes launching on Polkadot like a pretty low risk. That's the point, right? It makes, not saying it's like low or no risk, but it's something you've done before.
Exactly, and you can do this with the help of a very technical and very community that is very interested in the success of these projects and gives a lot of feedback. And then when you're ready, you go to Polkadot, and there obviously you can have a much more stable system, a team that is very mature to address the more mainstream community. And I do think that this model for us, it was priceless. It has helped us so much, and that's why we think that having a Kusama Parachain, I mean, I would do it again.
Yeah, I would. Or do you want to go next?
So yeah, it's quite useful also because of we have a variety of consensus upgrades coming that will
We're not talking about
nice.
forks on this panel.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just nice. It's just nice. It's convenient to have that.
Yes.
From the core development standpoint.
Any other comments on Kusama, or we can move on to the why parachain auctions are not rent misconception?
No, I'm just sometimes feel bad that Kusama tech and community hit all the punches from the fact that it's so experimental and new and often like not audited, but that's the purpose. Like there were like too much of hacks which pass even like which happen on the project even like after 3 or more audits. So nothing really can match the adversarial environment of crypto and like bad agents lurking around and seeking like what can go wrong, and or if the tech has some like wrong assumptions. But on the other hand, that's another superpower of Substrate and Dotsama ecosystem, that we have runtime upgrades. and when I'm also like often speaking with many founders and CTOs and developers from other ecosystems, and when I want to have some fun, I'm asking them like, hey, like, where will you do another hard fork, or what about hard forks in your chain? And I see how they are sweating and like feeling like, oh, that's too much work, and
It allows us to all test and prod like full time.
It's like asking some like American veteran about Vietnam, like
PTSD.
like it's PTSD, like from the hard forks, like so they really, and when they are telling them that like, man, like we are doing hard forks like every 3 weeks or every month, like
Not sustainable. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean,
And the same, like when I see someone claiming that, oh, we have this like super feature, which will make us the best layer 1, I'm like, cool. Like until now, many projects were inspired even by the Hydra design or by the Substrate or Polkadot. So maybe there's a time that we can also learn from others and apply it for ourselves, but we can do it like super easier. But it's not like, this is not the final design.
Maybe we can address the final of the triad of questions or misconceptions at the end here, that Substrate is hard to build on or hard to build with. I mean, you were already just getting into it a little bit, Jakub, it's like people who have to rely on hard forks for upgrades are in like not great shape from the get-go, but like, you know, Rust developers are hard to come by, but is that beyond that? Is like,
I mean,
the misconception true that Substrate's really hard to build
with
on?
most of the things that people want to build on, most real things that you would build on a blockchain aren't that easy in the first place. Like if you're trying to do something that's actually serious, so I would say the fact that it comes with a reasonably decent, it comes with a decent structure and all these other stories and whatever, it should compensate.
Yeah.
For what it.
Maybe I can add next. So with Centrifuge, we're
Early
actually...
adopter.
Yeah, I know. We were built on Ethereum first. We're actually migrating, finally, over to the Parachain soon, so that'll be exciting. But we already in 2020 launched our Substrate standalone chain. And the whole reason that we chose Substrate was because it was the easiest thing to build on at the time. And I would say still is. And the amount of support that we get from other teams building in the space, from the Parity team, is unmatched, I would say, in any other ecosystem. And they're trying. They're building up their ecosystems, but I would still say like this space of .zama and building on Substrate definitely has the greatest support on the tech side, even though it is hard to come by Rust developers. But I would say our Rust developers are amazing. And it has been, I think, the best choice that we made so far.
One thing to add, so when we started building the bridge, we actually first tried on Ethereum, and essentially an EVM is great. It's easy to onboard, but it's like a Swiss Army knife. You can do a lot of things, but if you want to build a house, you need specialized tooling, and that's what the Parachain allows you to do. So yes, maybe it's not as simple as writing Solidity, but there's a reason for it, because you're doing much more complicated things. You're customizing down to the level of which crypto libraries do we use, and we, for example, wrap and really use Bitcoin libraries. You can't do that in Solidity. And then generally looking beyond Solidity at other frameworks. I mean, when we started, I fully agree, like Substrate was by far the most advanced and the most stable framework to use. And we were actually, fun fact is, so we're talking also with like Stellan and Anatoly basically, because they wanted to have a BTC bridge as well. And they admitted, Substrate is good. They're pretty sure it's there to stay, and they're actually were thinking, well, could we have a good integration, because it's a good framework. So I don't think behind the scenes there's much doubt that Substrate is here to stay, and it's a good thing. So maybe it's more of a PR gag sometimes, but if you ask developers, I'm pretty sure everybody's of the same opinion.
Yes, and second largest developer community after Ethereum in, I guess, the last 2 years versus 7-ish years. How long is it? When was Ethereum? 2014. Do the math, something like that. So another anyone else have anything else to add on the Substrate side of things? Something else just popped into my head. Another misconception that I've seen around Polkadot, or I guess maybe it's just a misconception around like whether cross-chain applications can ever actually be secure. And some people out there in the crypto world have said recently that multi-chain is going to exist, but like actual cross-chain applications can't exist. This is something I think that Polkadot solves for. Why is that a misconception in the Polkadot context?
Yeah, well, I'm not actually familiar with the context there, but yeah, obviously it's...
A certain Ethereum co-founder made a big blog post saying that multi-chain will exist, but there'll be a system of bridges, many of which you can't necessarily trust the security on either side, but there will be no true cross-chain crypto.
Oh, well, yeah.
Ignoring
so you can go
Polkadot.
back, if you go back to, so there's 3 secure sharded protocols that we know. There's the sort of the what we plan for the future, the higher level scalability, which is essentially Brian Ford's OmniLedger paper. This is for going beyond 1,000 validators. This is always what people imagined Ethereum wanted to do, but maybe they don't. Who knows what they wanted. But there's also sort of ZK rollups, and there's this interactive proof rollup that Polkadot does, and we don't actually really know any others. So anyway, the answer is that we definitely do have like these like multi-chain, and one of them, the Brian Ford's thing, isn't that young. So I mean, it's been around for a while. So it's sort of clear that these things exist. I think Ethereum in general, they end up very sucked into when you build a thing, you always get a little bit sucked into the sort of the assumptions that it makes, and generally speaking, like when you talk to Ethereum protocol designers and whatever, they're unwilling to think about sort of altering the way that the gossip works, which we do all the time, and they're maybe not all the time, but relatively frequently. We have a number of customized network things that are optimal for certain situations or to improve security in certain ways or whatever. And they're also unwilling to think about things that go sort of outside of this smart contract model, and going outside of that and sort of being able to design our consensus around what we're trying to do gives us a lot of efficiency. Anyway, so to answer your question, I guess it's sorry, brain fart there. But
somewhat, I'm brain farting also, related to this, the way that parachains communicate with each other, and also just the way things are going to work in the multi-chain world.
I mean, basically, anyway, my point was basically that we do know these three schemes, two of which will eventually be used on Polkadot, and one of which is used now for doing real cross-chain stuff, and they work. And the arguments will eventually be formalized for what we're doing, and the arguments, like for Brian Ford's thing, was formalized years ago. So, and we're going to improve that, but it's certainly the statement. That particular statement is clearly false.
Yeah. So maybe this isn't a misconception, but a necessary reframing of how a lot of people think about the way crypto and blockchains work in the multi-chain, cross-chain future. These cross-chain applications are going to be built relying on different protocols asynchronously. So maybe we can talk about and if you want to jump in with something beforehand, but maybe the next thing we can address is and again, it's not necessarily a misconception, but how much thinking is going to have to change around design in an asynchronous future. But
yeah, I would like to give Jeff a follow-up question on it, which can educate myself and maybe a lot of people watching these streams and the audience, because it's not obvious one. But I got into it after I'm also co-founder of one smaller infrastructure company, and we are running there really a lot of full nodes for various blockchains and staking there, or providing RPC infrastructure with them, and I wasn't ever into the topic of light clients and why light clients are important and overall for the security, and why full nodes need to be basically as small and as reachable as possible. But I realized it when we were start to build Hydra and Basilisk, and we saw the dramatic increase of usage of it, not just for the legit use cases, but also for a lot of nonsense and a lot of scams. And when you will think about it, every time when you need to download or use some Ethereum full node for yourself, to have to make yourself really sure that what you are using is secure and proven, or other application developers needs to, or you need to for the RPC infrastructure, you are downloading with good data. Also a lot of this nonsense bullshit data which someone put there, or mostly what is striking me how there is a lot of wasted resources on like totally unrelated use cases of what is like important for you. So let's say you need just like Uniswap data, and because you want, you are just into DeFi, so you don't really care that there are like Ponzi, GameFi games or something like that. And this is one of the like coolest features, which is not very broadly understood, like how light client security and accountability is important for the users and for the builders, and why is it good overall? So maybe Jeff.
So there's kind of sort of two and a half light client things being for Substrate. So there's P.O. Krieger's small dot stuff, which I'm not going to say anything about. There's also Beefy, which is this sort of third round to the finality gadget, Grandpa. And what Beefy does is that it establishes, so Grandpa produces finality knowing that at least 2/3 of validators agree that something is final, but there's no agreement that everybody sees the same 2/3. And what Grandpa does is it produces a sort of a consistent output of that's at least 2/3 of the validators that all say that something is correct. And so we can have Grandpa output signatures that then can be used in other places. And one that doesn't really have another place it can be used yet, but which is quite good, is quite nice, is this light client proof thing that Alistair and Oana and Sergey have been working on. And what it does is it produces a BLS signature, and it also proves that the BLS signature corresponds to a particular field representing, that the key signing the aggregate key of this BLS signature corresponds to a particular set of validators. And they did a very, very nice job on this. And so this will make it, probably for browser light clients and stuff, it'll mean you're getting some kind of proof of finality from the chain, which is quite readable and doesn't necessarily require that the client in your browser even know all of the validator keys.
Client in your browser, not like big beefy full node of some blockchains which are already reaching like few terabytes and will be just worse.
Can't run one yourself, but we can run one on a phone now. Again, not necessarily a misconception, but a very cool feature that really isn't
it's not super famous misconception, but it was more like, why is it important to, because many people think like Polkadot is complex and nuanced and like complicated for the sake of being complicated, but it's like totally bullshit. Like if you
it's
want
necessarily
to
complicated.
like Jesus Christ, like even like today cars, like modern cars, they are like extremely complicated, but no one is bitching about like their complexity. It is what it is because we want something useful. And,
we want them to be more complicated and have
comfortable
more features.
and like energy efficient.
So
Cars, modern cars are unfortunately much more complex than horses.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah, biology is pretty hard to replicate.
Okay, but it's definitely much more complex than Model T from the
true.
From
Very
Ford.
true. So maybe we can address the just broader crypto ecosystem misconception that like instant finality and fully synchronous environments is the way to go and that's the way it's going to be. We're
if you're doing
towards
instant
a multi-chain
finality,
future.
If you're doing instant finality, you're probably leaving something out of the finality. And we do a lot of work in between when we sort of have figured out kind of which block we probably want and actually being able to
Misconception. Instant finality is good. Why is that a misconception?
Basically because you can't actually know that much about what you're finalizing.
Cosmos.
Yeah.
So in an asynchronous environment, what are some like big things that people designing protocols are going to have to like rethink in the way that they are designing things? It's like, I think we can all agree that asynchronicity is the future state of like DeFi, and I've heard people argue that it's actually going to be better for all these protocols that are being designed. Is that true or a misconception?
I just want to say something that maybe Kintsugi and Interlay community will be sad that some crazy Hydra user can't via flash loan exploit their vault. Maybe, I don't know.
Sorry. Again, you say our community is going to be sad that
because of asynchronous nature of Polkadot and not like instant finality, then we can't
He's saying he couldn't hack you.
Yeah. That your users
It's a
might be
feature,
sad
not a
that
bug.
they won't be wrecked via flash loans.
Well, fair enough. I mean, yes, maybe. I personally have a bit of a different view on like the whole asynchronous versus synchronous models, and the reason is that like it's very difficult to operate in a synchronous setting, and I do think the entire discussion is a bit. It's a bit different from what if you look at distributed systems research. The definitions that you have here, I think that compared to what is used in the currently also for marketing purposes, is a bit different. So if we talk about asynchronous in the sense that, okay, it takes us time to synchronize across different chains, I mean, yes, but with different consensus protocols, and it's difficult to bridge across different chains. I mean, it's actually impossible without a trusted third party. I mean, there's a proof for that. But just because it's difficult doesn't mean that, it doesn't work in practice through practical solutions. So, I mean, do we really need an instant, finality across Hydra and Kintsugi? I don't know, maybe. But on the other hand, this comes at the price that you're basically moving back to monolithic chain design. You can't have both, right? It's either you have customized chains which have customized features and we basically live in a multi-chain ecosystem, or you have everything within one blob and then you find them with instant finality, but it doesn't work, right? I mean, we're trying to get away from that because there are scaling issues. It's skyrocketing costs and so on. So I think it's more of a decision, okay, what do you actually want? And if that's super important for your application, if you're building something where you need an instant, basically, I guess composability is a better word perhaps, because you can instantly have atomic transactions between your application and let's say something on Kintsugi, well then just deploy a small component that just does that for your application on our chain.
But I think it's pretty rare, right, that some sort of application would need instant finality. And in our case, for example, we just build something around that, and we have an idea of epochs for a day, and things can happen in that epoch. So there's no need for instant finality for our use case, and I think for most use cases.
And if you need it, you can build a parachain with instant finality and just have it sync to the relay chain as it needs. We had the Kusama suggestion as a misconception. We have about 10 minutes left. Any other misconceptions folks have seen out there about Polkadot that should be addressed?
I think one of the three before was crowd loans.
Yes. It's not rent seeking.
Okay.
Why?
I'll start on. I think Jakub probably will definitely want to follow up. So a lot of people actually, so we went to Bitcoin Miami. Surprisingly, no longer that maxi. We were actually well received. But then when people ask us, okay, so you had to basically you collect assets to go live in Polkadot, is that not a problem? It's more of a marketing issue because the thing is, okay, yes, you have to go through a crowd loan or an auction and win that to become a Parachain slot. But on the other hand, if I don't do that, I have to build my own consensus. I have to figure out where do I get these validators to bootstrap my system. And Bitcoin has seen that issue. Even Bitcoiners know that's why there's merge mining, because they know even back Satoshi himself actually said, well, having fragmentation and having different chains try to compete for the same validator and proof of work set, it's difficult. So that's why you have merge mining. And in this case, well, instead of us trying to compete with Polkadot, trying to build our own consensus, we are happy to basically go to crowd loans, have the community decide whether they want us in that set, and if yes, we are part of the consensus, and I don't have to worry about that myself, and I can focus on building the product. And I think that's a misconception, because show me some other project in early stages that is capable of shipping product and building consensus and building that validator setup. I think probably it's going to be either or. Either you're able to build up the decentralization validator set, but then you lack the product.
We did that.
Sorry?
We did that.
Okay,
How was
sorry.
it? Was it
Fair
fun?
enough.
I'm just saying, just adding.
There's always exceptions. I mean, if you look at the broader ecosystem, it's difficult. It's hard to pull off. You really need a rockstar team, and you really need to be able to balance that. And I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the main thing there is that we all have actual products that we're trying to ship, and it's not a consensus mechanism. It's not a set of validators, and that's the value add, is being able to actually have Polkadot for that aspect of it, and let our teams focus on the product that we're actually trying to deliver.
Any comments on the crowd loan model and misconceptions around it?
Yeah, I would agree with Alexei on the marketing side. It's really, I think, rather than like looking at it as a marketing cost, it's much more like marketing opportunity, because there is like a huge community looking where they can place their dot in favor of which projects, or they are like checking all upcoming parachains and what is going on in the ecosystem. So like for us, the marketing was done basically itself. Like many people are asking me over a year, like, which marketing agency are you using? We are using. I'm like, what? Like, we don't have like any marketing agency. Like there is a marketing workshop organized by Parity, and they were like asking me like, can you sign up your marketing team? And I was like, no, because we don't have marketing team. Basically, we are just like communicating by ourselves. We don't, yeah. So the marketing is done. If you are, I think if you are like legit and honest project, which is trying hard, the marketing is done for yourself. But much bigger misconception about crowd loan is like, I saw, for example, on Twitter or elsewhere, like people bitching about how crowd loans are like unnecessary burden for founders. But we should go deeper. I spent like almost infinite time arguing with Bitcoin maxis in like past years about how proof of stake is bad distribution model. Or totally disaster, and like just reinventing the whole centralized system with like insiders and stuff. And they have pretty much true. Like I think best feature of proof of work actually is how is pushing miners or like big parties to force selling. So basically it's harder to aggregate or accumulate the stake in the network, because you need to cover like real cost. So this is pushing big parties to really put that Bitcoin back to the market and sell it and dump it basically, which is not the case in any proof of stake system. So what I want to say that if you will, like Messari had great research about like distribution or like centralization of whole proof of stake networks, and it's like almost impossible to do it in the fair way. Like most of new proof of stake layer ones, they were doing coinless sales, which is excluding like, I don't know, like half of the world because of KYC and AML, while crowd loans are like brilliant design in a way that people aren't risking the principal, they are not risking actually too much, which was also like biggest issue with ICOs, where like during the ICO era, like my first like professional job in crypto was like I was hunting scams, and I was speaking to so many retail people who invest in some ICO and lost their ETH, or if they won't lost their ETH, when they check the graph of the token divided the ETH, it was much better for them to hold the ETH. So they were wrecked a lot, but Polkadot, Parity and Web3 Foundation came up with the opportunity for retail to participate as early as possible in bootstrapping new protocols in a like permissionless way in very free way without much of the resources. You can have really just like few dots. You can put it to some crowd loan, obviously for a long time, but at the end of the day, you are not risking the principal, which is like great assurance. Like I don't know, like I hope I think institutions and other like people who are not so degen, they will love it. And also this is just like another proof that Polkadot community is one of the most long-term oriented, because they are willing to lose the availability to do whatever with their assets for a very long time. Like,
yeah, and it's a really clear signal of like how big your community is, how much support you have. I mean, we have tens of thousands of active wallets contributing to crowd loans. It takes like, you have to be paying, those are people who are paying close attention.
Yeah.
And that's back to your first point, Cassidy, is like
Just,
where's community?
yeah.
It's like, they're quite clearly paying very close attention, and there's a whole lot of them for such a nascent network.
just quick note, like for example, Moonbeam has 200,000 contributors.
It's crazy. It's amazing.
Like how we want to distribute in a better way, like kind of like proof of stake other networks. It's not possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go to CoinList and not pass KYC because you born in the like bad country.
Yeah.
But speaking of Moonbeam, shout out to Moon River for the anonymous auction that they did. Because
Clutch.
although I generally agree on the community aspect and having a lot of positives from the crowd loans, obviously, it's still, like I mentioned, with maintaining your own validator set, needing to do the crowd loan on a regular basis is overhead for our team when we're trying to focus on building a product. So having this option that Moon River just used is, I think, a pretty cool thing.
Yeah.
If you don't want to actually
Is
have to
it,
focus
so
on
maybe
that.
we talk about that as something as maybe it is a misconception, maybe it's a little bit true. It is an added burden to deal with this process to, maintain your slot of consensus on Polkadot. But going back to also to your earlier point about like otherwise having to bootstrap and manage a validator set and community on your own, like what's the trade-off? Is there a misconception that this is more work than it needs to be, when in reality it's actually less work than you'd be putting in managing a validator set on the back
I
end?
think maybe for now it's been a little bit more work than
We're all new to this.
exactly. We're all new to this, and I think all of these teams are working on models that will take the burden away from
Yeah.
the team that's building and start automating a lot of these things.
Treasuries
I think
will
Akala is
hold
doing
enough
that as
DOT
well. Exactly.
on a parachain, and there will just be a contract that consistently bids to ensure that there's a slot.
Yeah.
There's been some also conversations around at some point introducing changes to the parachain slot. I know Gav has talked about this publicly. It's like, if people want an option for a 10-year slot, governance is open for everyone to propose that. And I think there could be a decent amount of support for it amongst several teams and communities.
So I think like the initial period was definitely tough because it was new. But if you think about it this way, we were coming to Polkadot and like it was not clear, is the product going to work? Everybody was still early. Some teams were much more advanced. Some teams were still quite new. But then after you did the first crowd loan, and if you're successful, you're able to build up a treasury that basically then have the community, your community can vote to use that treasury to secure the slot. And if your product is doing well, if you get product market fit, people are using it, I don't think you'll have a challenge of actually securing a Parachain slot continuously. And it's basically, and if you're not yet doing well, or you're still bootstrapping and you're building something very complex, or you're pivoting, well, then you have to ask your community again, okay, do you give me another shot? And I think it's not too far away from what you see in the real world with, you say, okay, if your community support or crowdfunding and so on. So I think long-term, this model is definitely interesting, and it also allows newer projects to onboard, right? It does give everyone the chance. I mean, we assume that there'll be more Parachain slots and everybody will be able to get one. And I think allowing the community then to vote who comes in first and basically who onboards, while at the same time, with the teams that are already live, they will probably already have the capacity to just secure a slot for as long as they need to. So I personally don't see it as a problem long-term. Definitely was a challenge initially, but then it's new. nobody has done that before. If it was easy, somebody would have done it years ago. So
if it was easy, someone would have done it already. I think that's a great way to end it. Thank you all for joining me here today, and thank you all for coming and listening to us babble about the misconceptions around Polkadot. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.